Let's just get started. Hello, everybody. I am Nubia Willman. I am the first deputy for the Mayor's Office of Community Engagement here for the City of Chicago. Very grateful for having you all here today. Really excited about this panel. It is something we don't often think about unless you're really into the weeds, but it's something that we use every day. It's our infrastructure, it's our transportation. And we're really excited to have our city, county, and state leaders who will be providing some really great information about plans for recovery and ways that you can be able to participate in different ways. So we've eaten up a lot of the time, so we're going to jump into the presenters for the first round so everyone is aware about the agenda. We're going to discuss transportation, we're going to discuss infrastructure, and then environment and sustainability. I'm jumping ahead, so make sure we're moving along. If folks were interested in another topic, please put it in the questions, but hopefully we'll put the links for the other Zoom sessions in the chat if folks accidentally joined ours, but please stick around. You're going to hear some really great information. So without further ado, I do want to kick this over to transportation, where our CDOT Commissioner, Gia Biaggi, is going to start us off. Commissioner?
All right, thank you so much. It's great to be here, and we're going to run through some things. You know, I think maybe in the intro you heard, maybe we don't think about transportation and infrastructure every day, but the folks who are speaking today, we definitely do. And a big part of our city's recovery will be about how we invest in what we call our built environment, our streets, our sidewalks, our lights, our airports, our roadways everywhere. Those kinds of investments are part of not only making Chicago resilient, but bringing us back. And there's a lot of ways that folks can participate. So I'm going to walk through a few things. I'll tell you a little bit about CDOT. I'll talk a little bit about the federal infrastructure bill that sets the context for most of us who are talking today. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on at CDOT. You can see in the slides in front of you, as I mentioned, you know, we work on all kinds of things that we call infrastructure. It's a very broad term, and we're a lot of the hardscape, if you will. And so at CDOT, we're responsible for all 4,000 miles of the city's roadways and all of the sidewalks and the alleys, the lighting, as I mentioned, the bridges. We have 400 bridge and viaduct structures across the city, but then also important infrastructure like bikeways, like making sure that we have pedestrian safety improvements so that we move around our city in all kinds of ways. We're able to do that, whether it's by bus or train, by walking, by rolling, any way you do it, we're part of that picture and trying to make that happen. A few other things that we do is provide mobility services like the Divvy bike share system. And so, you know, we are sort of connecting the dots between creating a great city that you can move around on and get to where you need to go, but then also supporting other kinds of transit, whether that's the CTA, and whether that's the airports and other folks you'll hear from. So that's a little bit about CDOT. Let's go to the next slide, and I can talk about what we're all hearing so much about, which is President Biden's federal infrastructure funding. It has a lot of names, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that tells you what it is. And it's really called a bipartisan infrastructure law, because it is one of those things that got everybody finally together on infrastructure. So across the country, you're looking at a $1.2 trillion bill. This is really once in a generation, and it's intended to grow the economy, create jobs, and do it not only in other cities, but in our own, and really focused on key investments in all of the things that I talked about that CDOT and my colleagues you'll hear from work on. But it's really a lot of big firsts. It's the largest investment ever in public transit, the largest in passenger rail, Amtrak, moving people around, but also in the kinds of things that help us be leaders in Chicago for freight and goods and services, moving those all around the city. You'll hear from my colleagues on clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure, absolutely critical. It's also the largest investment in things like clean energy. So there are a couple of key themes that fit very well with work we've been already underway doing in Chicago through our Chicago Works program, which is local money. So now we have federal money, local money, and the federal bill has the same themes that we have locally, all around equity, making sure we're investing in neighborhoods all across the city, and especially in places where we haven't been in a while, investing in climate mitigation. We want to create jobs too. That's a big part of this. And then locally, you know, some of the themes that we focus on, in addition to equity and climate, mobility, I talked about it, moving around the city. We want to make sure we're doing concrete improvements where we have ADA accessibility work. We want to make sure that we're helping the CTA extend the red line south to 130th Street and investing through these other kind of street improvements that I described. The second big theme is modernization. We want to make sure Chicago is always moving forward. And so that means investing in things like our streetlight program, where we just finished creating the nation's largest, smartest lighting program that uses machine learning to tell us lights are out and routes crews. We're investing in that kind of forward-looking work, whether it's our traffic signal modernizations, making our city ready for electric vehicles. And then the third category of resilience, and that's all about things like making sure that we're managing our stormwater, that we have communities that are well forested, so we reduce what makes our city hot in the summer, like the urban heat island effect, so planting more trees, and then taking care of our shoreline with all of the wave action. So that's kind of what's coming our way. So it's in addition to what you've heard about earlier today, funding for violence prevention, funding for housing, some of these other categories. So let's go to the next slide, and I can just talk quickly, and I am talking quickly, so apologies, but we have a lot to cover and a lot of good folks that you should hear from. So the kind of work that we're putting on the street covers those categories you can see on the left, everything from bridges and viaducts all the way to Lake Michigan shoreline protection. And then also the way that we deliver it. So if you're thinking about how to participate, right, whether it's jobs at CDOT or jobs through contractors and architects and engineers that we hire, there are all kinds of ways that this federal money plus local money that we have put together over the last 2 years can make a difference. So professional services like engineering, architecture, planning, we hire lots of companies to do that. We also hire folks in-house. We have a lot of opportunities that are being advertised right now. Construction management, that's a great example of where particularly we have pools of minority-owned and women-owned exclusively pools for contracting for CM, that's what we call it, construction management, as well as design services. So those are really good opportunities for minority-owned companies and women-owned companies to help us design and engineer and manage projects. Obviously, we do a lot in putting contracts out to bid for construction. I'll talk about a couple that are coming up this quarter. And then there are other things that maybe we don't think about, but trucking and materials are all the kinds of pieces of contracts that really make a project whole that we'll have out on the street thanks to these funds and to the Chicago Works funds. And then lastly, in-house, looking at labor for whether it's asphalt laborers and concrete laborers, some of those architects and engineers that we need in-house, and even administrative positions. We need good folks that can help us process payments, that can help project manage. Those kinds of skill sets are definitely needed and things we're looking for. Next slide, please. So a couple of upcoming opportunities. These will be on the street next quarter. We have more things, but these are some of the big ones that, again, are part of making that huge difference in making our city resilient and ready for the future. And that comes in the form of bridge projects. So we've got a really great one coming out to bid for contracting to rebuild really the 31st Street over the Metro tracks. That's across DuSable Lakeshore Drive on the South Lakefront. We have another critical viaduct project that's associated with Union Station, the hub of our passenger rail that makes us a destination not only in the region, but nationally. So we're working on a series of viaducts for rehabilitation. Those are coming out. And so that's coming out this quarter. And vertical clearance, it sounds kind of heady, but really it's about making sure that trucks and cars can move through neighborhoods and we can improve the quality of life by making sure that we're reducing and really being strategic about where truck traffic is happening in neighborhoods. And then you see in the bottom left, street resurfacing all over the place. Really making sure our roads are in a state of good repair. We have 4 major street resurfacing projects coming out. So you'll see those coming. And then of course, we're hiring. Next slide, please. So here are a couple of ways to keep in touch. And before I pass it to my colleagues, we have a construction summit coming up. So this is a first look workshop. So we'll be talking more about some of these projects that I just discussed, how you can be part of the bid process, how you can build relationships between contractors and subcontractors. This is an 8-hour summit on March 24th. So mark your calendars. We really encourage folks who are interested in being part of what we're building, what we're designing, to please attend. You can find more links that are really important here as well. Hire local. We want you to hire local. We want you to hire folks in the neighborhoods where the work is happening. There's some good links here to help you do that through partnerships we have with Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. And then also stay connected with us. So some of these links too will not only tell you about bids coming out on the street, but also job opportunities here at CDOT and the other infrastructure departments associated with the City of Chicago. So that was really fast, but I want to pass it on to my colleague, Commissioner Reed from the Department of Aviation, who are doing incredible things, again, all about transportation and mobility and getting people from where they are to where they need to be. So thank you, and on to Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Commissioner Biaggi. We are excited about infrastructure here and all the possibilities, and want to thank you so much today for joining us for the Readiness Summit. On behalf of the Mayor and the entire Chicago Department of Aviation, it's my pleasure to share with you information on what's happening at the airports. Next slide. Great. So we are very grateful for Congress's recognition of the importance of the infrastructure money and look forward to implementing important projects that really expand and modernize transportation facilities made possible by this legislation. As Gia said, the bipartisan infrastructure law or bill includes investment in the airports as well to ensure that they remain operational in a safe and secure manner and continue to drive regional economic growth. O'Hare International Airport is in the midst of an exciting capital program that launched in 2018. It's called O'Hare 21, and it's Chicago's vision for a modern airport to meet the needs of the traveling public through the 21st century and beyond. This program covers several significant and concurrent developments at the airport, including the terminal area plan, which is well aligned with the intentions of the bill funding, which increases capacity and passenger access. It replaces aging infrastructure, achieves ADA compliance, and expands accessibility for persons with mobility challenges. It improves access for historically disadvantaged populations and improves energy efficiency, which includes upgrading environmental systems, upgrading plant facilities, and achieving leadership in energy and environmental design or LEED accreditation standards, and improves actual and potential competition. Therefore, this additional federal funding ensures that our upcoming projects will move forward and retain those key elements that increase capacity, reduce energy use, and enhance accessibility. O'Hare's terminal area plan is currently under federal regulatory review, with the construction anticipated over the next several years. Next slide. Investment in Chicago's airports benefits the city of Chicago and its residents and the overall regional economy, as well as the entire national airspace system. The city's goals to build capacity in small and diverse businesses that stimulate community development outside the airport align very well with the Department of Transportation. In 2021, more than $296 million was spent with certified minority and women-owned businesses, a total of 37%. And that's a $77 million increase over 2020. The city has demonstrated successful stewardship and utilization of over $1 billion in federal grants for the recently completed O'Hare Modernization Program. That project reconfigured the airfield and reduced airspace delays by 64%. And it also created approximately over 32,000 jobs, constructional and professional services. Those completed runways have now literally paved the way to develop our new terminals. And what a new project will do is address aging facilities as we replace some of O'Hare's oldest terminals, which is nearly 60 years old and at the end of its useful life. Improving efficiency with a new baggage handling system and new international processing facilities co-located with carrier operations. It improves a passenger experience and efficiently accommodates demand for the terminal space and gates well into the future. Next slide. Through the small and mid-sized business initiatives, our SBI and MBI programs, our contracts provide opportunities for companies to be the first-tier primes and subs at our airports. Programs like our 50/50 payment program addresses hurdles for small businesses, like the need for expediting invoice payments, how to get certified, businesses that will learn about specific CDA projects and programs and opportunities. The city's mentoring program is also a key one that we employ here to provide diverse firms with a pathway to working successfully at the airports. We also collaborate with the Department of Procurement on a program to deploy assist agencies to provide technical business support for diverse businesses impacted by COVID-19. We're always working with our project partners and other city agencies to develop new ways to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the CDA's workforce, contracting opportunities, and employees. There are many resources available for companies interested in developing a relationship with us and bidding and winning on contracts. A good starting place is the CDA Bid and Resource Center. Representatives are available Monday through Friday for a hands-on technical assistance that's available for contractors, tradespeople, and construction professionals. In addition to learning about specific opportunities, businesses can learn about getting certified ACDBE for your concessionaires, or DBE for federally funded projects or minority women-owned business, the people with disabilities certification, as well as veterans. The CDA Procurement Opportunity Guide is a way to stay up to date on the latest contracting opportunities that we have here at our airports. The guide is updated quarterly and available online, as well as in our Bid and Resource Center. And it includes information on competitive bid constructions, professional services, and work services. Next slide. Airports are economic engines, and all of this development supports job creation, economic stimulation, and business opportunities. And at the Department of Aviation, we're not only focused on what we're building, but who's doing the building. And no one knows or appreciates the power of procurement to drive meaningful change, transform communities, and provide opportunities and create jobs better than Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And her vision of a city that is more equitable and inclusive inspires and guides the work we do. This is a big project, and from architects to engineers, IT to custodial services, we are working with diverse firms of all sizes to move things forward. And as you can see on here, our team is in place, and happy to report that our program management office and all three of our builders all have certified minority and women-owned businesses as joint venture partners at the top. We're successfully growing capacity and creating a place during a global economic pandemic, no less, for small, diverse firms for the first time ever to work at our airports on projects both large and small. So no matter the size of your business, there is a place for you at the Department of Aviation. So let's work together and make O'Hare 21 a success. Invite us to your teams or your community meetings, add us to our events, to your newsletters, and make your constituents aware of our aviation learning series. Next slide. We want to make it straightforward to find us. And so what we've done is established an email right there at the top, which is ORD, which is our call sign, MDW, which is Midway Small Business at the City of Chicago. We want to make sure that we find you opportunities to do business with us, and our capital programs are large and diverse, and there are opportunities for all sizes and all types of businesses. Contact us, please, and let us know how we can work with you and the entire Chicagoland area region to get engaged in this work. And now I'd like to turn it over to Sis Killen from the Cook County Department of Transportation. Sis?
Thank you, Jamie, much appreciated. My name is Sis Killen, and I am the Superintendent of Transportation and Highways for Cook County. My department is jurisdictionally responsible for the planning, design, and maintenance of over 1,600 miles of pavement, 135 bridge structures, 365 traffic signals, and 7 pumping stations. But under President Preckwinkle's leadership, my charge goes far beyond that. We recognize that transportation infrastructure is the catalyst for community and regional economic development, and it's also the backbone in creating healthy, thriving communities. Next slide, please. We as county government, we recognize that we need to partner with our sister agencies like CDOT and IDOT, who you're going to hear from shortly, and along with our local municipalities and townships to address the transportation infrastructure in a holistic manner and across all modes of transportation. Next slide. To that end, the Cook County Board, we approved a policy document called Connecting Cook County. This is for our long-range transportation planning and implementation efforts. And as part of that work, we have identified 5 policy priorities to help guide our investment all across the county. And I want to make sure that we focus in on that equitable transportation solutions are really core to each one of these following priorities, these priorities that we are going to go through. The first one is to prioritize transit and other transportation alternatives. We have a very robust transit system in this region, and it is the responsibility of all transportation agencies to make sure we're doing our part to make sure that it is accessible to all residents. We're also focusing on other transportation alternatives, which are pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure facilities. We are also supporting this region's role as North America's freight capital. And we recognize that trucks and trains, while they can be burdensome, they are a vital part to our economy. And we want to partner with local municipalities who many times bear the burden on their shoulders alone of some of the the truck industry and the freight impacts along local roadway systems. We want to ensure that we're promoting equal access to opportunity, keeping equity at the core of all of our investment decisions. We want to maintain and modernize what already exists before we seek future expansion projects. And we want to focus on increased investment in transportation. And this last bullet is key. We just heard from Commissioner Biaggi and Commissioner Rhee about federal funding that's making its way here to the state of Illinois. We've been blessed with this additional funding also from the state's 2019 Rebuild Illinois Capital Bill. And today I'm here to share some opportunities that are going to be provided in the transportation space under ARPA. And the goal is to leverage all of our local, state, and federal resources to the greatest extent possible. We know that the needs are great, that the dollars are few, but right now with ARPA money before us, we have a tremendous opportunity to create lasting impact with a strategic infrastructure investment. Next slide. Right now, I'd like to provide an overview on one of the programs that is receiving the American Rescue Plan funding at the county, and this is an expansion of my department's Invest and Cook program. We are being awarded $25 million to expand the program that was first introduced in 2017 as a way for the county to implement the priorities associated with our long-range plan connecting Cook County. This is the document that helps guide where and how we are making transportation investments to not only attract but retain businesses, support our residents, and to bring in the capital and talent we need in our region. Funding that's provided in this program, it helps our municipal partners cover costs associated with projects that may have languished otherwise, taking them off of the sidelines and moving them into the project pipeline to address local communities' priority needs. No matter how big or how small, each one of these projects is fundamental for building back equitable communities and overall a stronger economy. And again, we want to cover all forms of transportation projects, looking at bike and pedestrian projects, traditional roadway projects, resurfacing projects, freight projects that can include vertical clearance projects like Commissioner Biaggi spoke of earlier today, looking at opportunities to advance CREATE, a project that helps freight rail mobility improve here in the Chicagoland area. And we also want to focus in on the transit projects where we have partnered with our transit agencies to provide first mile, last mile access to this robust transit network we have, but also to provide assistance in upgrading those facilities. To date, we have awarded nearly $40 million across 162 projects, and these awards invest in all project phases. And this is really important for the work that we do, that we are looking at planning services, engineering, design, and construction. And this is really important that we're focusing on the earlier phases of these projects because our investment helps position them for that critical follow-on funding available from both the state and federal governments. And while our current $8.5 million program seems relatively small when we're thinking about infrastructure, because it is quite costly, our strategic selection of projects both on and off of the county system, the jurisdiction system, has yielded a very handsome rate of return with with every dollar we have invested in this program, we have seen $3 in follow-on funding as a result of those project selections. And with the funding allocated through the American Rescue Plan, we're committed to do that again with the partnership of local agencies. Next slide. Want to talk a little bit now about the project eligibility. This program is going to fund many different types of projects. We can think of projects like bridge improvements, maybe geometric design to help for better traffic flow and safety, installation of electric car vehicle charging stations, sidewalks, the rail station improvements I mentioned, quiet zone studies in communities that have a high occurrence of freight trains, and looking at other projects that help promote inclusive mobility. Again, we're willing to fund any phase from planning through to construction. And the program is also going to fund those projects that are in jurisdictions other than our own. And the reason for that is that we recognize that transportation needs do not stop at municipal boundaries. They don't stop at county boundaries, and neither should the solutions. Multi-jurisdictional projects and those of greater complexity are really good candidates for this program. And so while our eligibility is broad, there are a few project elements that our funding does not provide for. This program is really meant for project implementation. So we do not support staff salaries, and it doesn't pay for capital equipment purchases. And the final bullet here is what we're able to do with the inclusion of the ARPA money. It allows Cook County to take its investment into other areas that were previously not eligible with my funding source. I am supported by the state's motor fuel tax, but with the infusion of ARPA, I can also look beyond those boundaries towards sewer projects, water projects, street lighting, green infrastructure, and many more. Next slide. Want to talk now about who is eligible to apply as a project implementer for this program. Local governments, we're thinking about villages and cities, townships, they're also eligible. Transit agencies like the RTA, CTA, PACE, and Metra. Natural resource agencies or public land agencies like the Cook County Forest Preserve, park districts, and then also private entities, which would include not-for-profits. The caveat here is that you do need to have a public sponsor for your project. An example of this might be a bicycling organization or a Friends of group that applies to help study trail connections, for instance, in our park district. So there may be some projects that are submitted that the county may identify that we would be the ones best positioned to lead them. And those implementation efforts may include projects that span municipal borders or that involve the participation by multiple agencies, or those of moderate to high complexity, or those that are truly regional in nature. Next slide. As far as the project proposal review process goes, project opportunities can be directed to your county commissioner. I will be working hand in glove with them at the department to perform all reviews of these projects for technical feasibility. We'll be looking at project readiness, the scope and scale of the project, the schedule and the budget. We'll be assessing what additional resources or partners might be required to get this project to full implementation. We'll be reviewing both the project and the community benefits. Again, as we're looking at this through the lens of the American Rescue Plan, we want to ensure that these dollars are helping communities recover from the impacts of COVID. We also want to make sure that we are providing investments in disadvantaged communities where there has been a history of disinvestment that has impacted their economic vitality. This program is going to prioritize equity. To date, we have invested more than 60% of the funding from our current program year after year into low to moderate income communities. We have to make sure that we're making the requisite infrastructure investments in these communities, again, to help lift them up and to stimulate the economy. And we intend to do that again with the infusion of the ARPA dollars. We're going to be distributing these projects all across Cook County and all across project phases. And what's really key about this is that we want to make sure that we are keeping the project pipeline moving. And that is because we want to have a number of projects that include different modes that are available for state and federal resources, because some grant opportunities can be specific to a particular phase of a project. And we want to ensure that our region is always ready for whatever discretionary grant opportunity comes our way. And lastly, we seek to leverage these ARPA dollars to the greatest extent. We want to maximize not only, the infusion of dollars, but really the benefit that they can have in our communities. This is a once in a career opportunity, and we aren't going to let that go to waste. We recognize that with the infusion of funds, we're also creating additional opportunity for business to engage in work, not only with the county, but perhaps with some of our partners who will be awarded funds as part of our program. Next slide. Have a slide up that shows how you can connect with us, that for our general website for the Department of Transportation and Highways. We also have a reference that you can take a look at the Invest in Cook program as it exists to date, and we'll be posting additional information here as the call for the projects associated with the American Rescue Plan dollars come online. I would now like to turn it over to one of our state partners, to Holly Bieneman with the Illinois Department of Transportation. She is the Director of Planning and Programming. Holly.
Thank you, Superintendent Killen. Happy to be here, everyone. My name is Holly Bieneman, and I am with the Illinois Department of Transportation. The Illinois Department of Transportation is responsible for 15,907 state miles of pavement, 7,861 bridges, and 1,118 miles of navigable waterways. We're the third largest mover of freight via all modes, trucks, rail, marine, and air, and being the third largest by value along with tonnage. We also have the second largest transit network in Northeastern Illinois. This proves the importance of our transportation system to the economy for Illinois. And we have seen that demonstrated through the commitment through Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly's passage of Rebuild Illinois, along with the federal government's passage and approval of the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. It has a lot of names, as I'm sure you're catching on to. Rebuild Illinois has set us up very well in order to have access to these federal funds that are coming from IIJA. It also mirrors very well what we have in Rebuild Illinois, where it was multimodal in nature, with funding for our ports, funding for our airports, funding for our transit agencies. Some information on the IIJA that is going to come to the state. We expect $11.2 billion for highway development. Those are our regular formula funds that come to the department to maintain that system, to expand that system strategically, to modernize that system. 1.4 billion of that over the life of the 5-year program will be for bridge replacement and repairs. And that's just not on the state's jurisdiction bridges, that is also for the local bridges and the off-system bridges, because they are important to our transportation network as well. Through IIJA, there was also significant discretionary program additions. Those discretionary programs are programs where we can compete for major transportation projects that our formula funding will not cover. So, for example, we have 12.5 billion on top of the 1.4 billion that we can compete for bridge projects. And it's not just the state that can compete, it is also local jurisdictions such as the county or the city. There's also 16 billion in funding for existing discretionary programs that we have been applying for, that include RAISE and infra. That additional funding, as Superintendent Killen just discussed, is important to have your project ready and be able to compete for that due to readiness. IIJA includes $66 billion for rail, for nationwide, for Amtrak repairs and station improvement and train modernization. That is nationwide. For Illinois alone, there's $4 billion included in IIJA for public transit and $616 million for airport infrastructure. Something truly innovative was the inclusion of funding for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. That is something that was also included in Rebuild Illinois and is mirrored in the federal law. So we expect $149 million to expand the EV charging network in the state of Illinois. So we'll go to the next slide. So for the anticipated timeline, there are a lot of moving pieces to this. This became law just in the fall, and we're still waiting guidance from USDOT on how a lot of these programs will be implemented. However, the funding we are aware of the funding, and we have included it into our multi-year highway improvement program. That is our list of projects that we fund based for highway and bridges. And that is expected to be published this spring. That identifies the projects that the state will take on over the next 6 years. And if you click on the slide, we do map the multi-year program on our website, and there's an image example of it with the information of what's going to happen and like what type of work, when it's expected, and how much it's anticipated to cost. This is on our website, Getting Around Illinois, which many of you may have visited during this latest winter storm, because it does include our road conditions, but it also includes a lot more information, including our program. I also wanted to put some links up here for how to do business with the department. The first one is information on how to be a contractor for the department through our lettings. And the second is all of our procurements, including professional services, and even supplies. So please feel free to look at those for opportunities for procurement. Additionally, IIJA and Illinois DOT is providing a lot of opportunities for funding programs. So we have a wide variety of different types of funding programs, from bridges, from providing truck access, improving roadways for truck access, down to bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So a wide availability of different calls for projects. And the best way to keep up to date on that is to join our listserv. And this call for projects link is a way to join our listserv for that. And it will send, we send out a regular memo with an explanation of what is eligible, who is eligible, along with how to apply. So make sure to sign up for that if you're interested in any funding opportunities. And we'll go to the next slide. As I'm sure a lot of you have heard during this event today, the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act is important to get registered and pre-qualified within the portal to have access to state funds. That does include any federal flow-through funds, such as any from IIJA. That would be one through a competitive call for projects. The department, similar to as Superintendent Killen indicated, multi-jurisdictional projects are looked upon very fondly when competing for funds. We also look a lot, we have been including more considerations of equity in all of our programming decisions. And so you will see some component to that, which it may include decreasing the required match, allowing maybe for 90, 95, or 100% funding, which is important. Other items that we look at are readiness. So any pre-construction activities that could be completed, such as planning, engineering, or even land acquisition, is going to be looked upon favorably as we try to implement projects as quickly as we can. And with that, I will turn it back to Nubia. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is such great information. I'm going to invite folks to put questions in the Q&A feature. If you haven't already, we have a few, and I'll get to them in a moment. We'll have some time for questions. And as folks are maybe putting in their questions, I also just wanted to thank these panelists. Really, I know the audience, just like me, is just really in awe of the information of how interconnected transportation systems are, how important they are, and really excited about all the opportunities that are coming our way. So thank you so much for presenting all of that information and ways for folks to be able to keep in touch. I'm just going to ask, one of the first questions is, will the IIJA funds be distributed through the Invest and Cook program? Who wants for the count?
I can take that question. Thank you very much, Nubia. So with our Invest and Cook program, we are intending to fund the expansion with the American Rescue Plan dollars. However, we are very excited about the opportunity that the IIJA funds will provide, as we are seeking that leverage of the funds and the follow-on funding for those larger, more costly the construction side of those projects. So I guess indirectly, yes, but if those funds are going to be used to fund grant awards in the Invest and Cook rollout, the answer to that would most likely be not.
Thank you. The other question is, will resources be available for Metro Station ADA improvements? If so, who do we send ideas and suggestions to?
Well, Metro's not on the call, but I'm happy to address. I think what's really significant in the question is that the bill actually has a new program that sounds very familiar to Chicagoans, because we made it up, which is the ASAP program. And that means making stations accessible as soon as possible. It's a program that the CTA actually had been working on locally, because we'd like to make all of our train stations ADA accessible. And Senator Duckworth actually, and along with Congressman Newman and Senator Durbin, the whole Illinois delegation, made that program the model for the distribution of ADA accessibility funds for train stations. And they turned our program into essentially the national program. And so one, that's something to be very proud of, that Chicago has really had an influence on the distribution of the funding, but that makes funding available for train stations, municipalities everywhere. In terms of connecting with Metro on it, certainly you could put your ideas in the chat, and we'd be happy to send those over to those folks. And we can follow up with you on the right contact person as they're not able to join us here. I do know that we've had conversations that, you know, the picture of infrastructure is bigger than just CDOT and aviation. Would you believe it? It's bigger than the county. It's bigger than all of us who are on this call today. And so folks like CTA and Metro and some of the other institutions that also will carry the funds, I know that they're also interested in having sessions like these. And so we'll also take that back as something that we can mutually work on together.
And if I might add on to that, you know, as we're speaking about partnership opportunities, you know, this is really key to advancing the critical transportation priorities in the region. And what we've done with Invest in Cook, we actually did have a project where we had partnered with Metro, and that was for the design. And we actually made some funding for the reconstruction of a station in Harvey, the 147th Street station on the Metro Electric, where some of these ADA improvements were included in that station redesign. So I think looking at that larger funding pot for how we move some of these more major infrastructure projects, that's absolutely there. But the partnership that you see from each of us here on this panel, you know, it really is an all hands on deck when it comes to supporting our region's transit system.
Thank you. I want to clarify, no, for the audience, the chat is disabled. We'll put in the chat for you to see the community engagement email. So if you want to follow up specifically or you have questions, you can leave us your information through that email. There's two more questions here. I'm going to try to summarize this one. I think I got it. It's about electrification, quote unquote, of transportation and how it's exciting, but maybe not super cost effective. And there's lots of things that need to be considered. And so the comment is, how is the state, county, and city seeking to decarbonize these sectors of transportation until electrification can meet the sector's needs?
Well, I can start from the same perspective, if that's helpful. You know, so I think it's very important to pay attention to what's coming out very shortly, which is the draft plan of Chicago's climate action plan. And so we had one many years ago. I think it run its course through about 2017. And so there's a lot of work underway to say, okay, what are our goals, not only around the transportation sector, but beyond, of course, and how can we reduce Chicago's carbon footprint and really connect with the Paris Accords in terms of our climate goals for our city. And so we are looking at things like beyond simply, I think, in the point in the chat is a good one. Personal vehicles are one thing, but freight and these other kinds of delivery systems, it's much more challenging. And we can see that we've worked really hard, even just to try to electrify our transit fleets. And that's been challenging. We do have more money to do it, but it's not the whole piece of it. So part of our climate action plan will include looking at what does it mean to electrify commercial fleets and whether, you know, and how freight fits into that. How can we incentivize it? But I think the author of the question is making the point, how do we look really upstream, right? The point here is what kind of pulls do we have on fossil fuels? And that's something that will be part of a very important analytical process over the next couple of months. So please, I think it's Michael Archie here, look forward to opportunities for community comment as part of our climate action planning process. We invite you to participate. And I think maybe there'll be some information as a follow-up for folks who've registered for this. And Nubia, maybe we can sort of put some links in there because I know that's coming very soon. So we agree, we've got to figure out the upstream problem as while working also downstream on kind of freight, you know, EV enabled loading docks and, you know, those kinds of things as well. So I'll pass it off to my colleagues to add on to that.
Great response, Commissioner. And I think just adding on to that a little bit is that we really also want to partner with the other agencies in the area. CMAP, this is an area, our region's Metropolitan Planning Organization, this is an area that they are focusing on. And as we're looking at projects and programs that can help move our region towards these goals, this is exactly what we're taking a look at. You know, what are we doing for, you know, the long haul outcome that we're seeking while we await, you know, full electrification? You know, the two really do need to go hand in hand. It's not one without the other because it is going to take time. And, you know, in terms of the electrification, one thing that we are doing at the county is that, you know, we're looking at opportunities to provide those electric charging stations, you know, at our facilities across the county, looking at places like my maintenance districts, looking at other county owned infrastructure. But absolutely, we're trying to reduce that carbon footprint. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to make such an investment in our region, you know, for transit, to see how we can reduce emissions and really take advantage of much of the existing infrastructure that we already have.
Thanks, and I will just step in briefly. This is Holly with Illinois DOT. We also, through the IIJA or bill, BIL, also has the carbon reduction program, which is an opportunity to, in fact, reduce our carbon footprint, and something that we will work with CMAP to also develop. And so look forward to that. I think through Rebuild Illinois and IIJA, you're seeing some forward thinking in this, initiative. Another thing I'd like to highlight is that in the past, the department has completed calls for projects for our competitive freight program and our port program, and that has included incentivizing any kind of technological advancement or electrification of equipment to move freight. And so looking at it from many different vantage points, we're definitely trying to address this issue. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much. This is, again, just so enlightening, so exciting, because it's systems and services we all use every day. So thank you so much for your leadership to this first round of panelists. We're going to move to our next session here still in the Zoom. So thank you again, Commissioner, Superintendent, and Holly, the state, city, county. We're really, really grateful for your time. We are going to move on to housing. I'm so sorry. Looking at the wrong agenda. We're going to move on to infrastructure. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so I love that my errors will be living in forever. But we are recording this. It's also streaming on Facebook. We'll be able to share slides, links, the recording of this all after the summit is over. So make sure that you're taking good notes, but you'll be able to watch this later after it has gone live. So for infrastructure, we're going to have, again, city, county, state point people who are going to be discussing infrastructure, what it is, why it's important, the opportunities that are coming around the bend now that we're going to have recovery funds available. So we're going to start again with the city, with our Department of Water Management, Joel Vieira.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. And Joel, when he is done with his presentation, we'll kick it over to the county. And then again to state, and then we'll do our question and answer. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A chats while we're going through the presentations. Thank you. Take it away, Joel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Vieira. I'm with the City of Chicago Department of Water Management. I'll try to be brief. First, a little bit about the Department of Water Management. Department of Water Management has approximately 1,900 employees. We are the 4th largest department in the city of Chicago. We manage and maintain the largest and 8th largest water filtration plant in the world, maintain 12 pumping stations, 2 cribs, 4,300 miles of water mains, and 4,500 miles of sewer mains. To sort of keep that in context, that's the distance from Chicago to South Africa. We provide 1 billion gallons of clean, safe drinking water every day to 5.3 million people in the Chicago area and the suburbs, which represents approximately 40% of the residents of the entire state of Illinois. We also coordinate on large infrastructure and contract projects with our partners in the Department of Transportation, City's Department of Buildings, the Department of Planning, also the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. For 2022, the focus of the Department of Water Management is going to be on equitable water reconnection and the start of the lead service line replacement initiative. Very briefly, these are the 2 programs that are noted on here. The water reconnection program, it's a 5-year program. We started a pilot in 2020 where we basically go to low-income residents whose water has been shut off. We turn the water back on. It's not as simple as that because in a lot of instances, the water's been shut off because folks have interior plumbing problems. And so turning the water on really doesn't solve the issue. So we've identified approximately 1,700 such locations. We're working with a couple of contractors to help us on this. And so what we do is we go into folks' homes, we repair the plumbing, provide new fixtures, ensure that the water lines are working properly, and turn the water back on. So for this year, 2022, we've received a significant increase in the funding for the program. So we're looking to ramp it up significantly. As I mentioned, there are 1,700 homes. This is a 5-year program. However, we'd like to expedite this as quickly as possible. For the lead service line replacements, the city is already has 3 programs in place. So there are approximately 400,000 water service lines in the city that need to be replaced. Most of them were installed prior to 1986. And we want to make sure that we are doing this consistently and in a structured format. Currently, the city has 3 programs in place. One is called the Equity Lead Service Line Replacement Program. Under that program, we receive federal funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to target low-income residents, replace their water lines. It's a very expensive undertaking. It costs between $15,000 and $25,000 per home. So obviously, low-income folks are going to struggle with that. The other program we have is a homeowner-initiated program where non-low-income homeowners can replace their water lines, and the city will waive the permit fees, which are approximately $3,200. Because this is a large undertaking and it's quite complex, and because different parts of the city have different topography and different infrastructure, we are doing a pilot program on one entire block on the south side and southwest side of the city. So we're looking from the pilot, we're looking to understand a little bit better how we can gain some efficiencies, reduce some costs. So those are the 3 programs we're doing right now. But as I mentioned, the larger program here is 400,000 water service lines. Beginning in 2027, under new legislation, the city must begin to replace no less than 2% of the lead service lines every year for the next 50 years, beginning in 2027. This is a huge undertaking. We estimate that the price tag in 2021 dollars is approximately $9 billion. The biggest challenge for us is identifying funding. The problem is that while we can use bond money and water rate funding to repair the public side, of the service line, we cannot use those funds to replace the private side, which is the homeowner side. So that's where we're looking for some assistance from the federal government and our state partners. But the goal of both programs is to support equitable water accessibility and neighborhood stability. Next slide. So the anticipated timeline for the water reconnection program, as I mentioned, we have 5 years worth of funding. We can spend it all this year, or we can spend it in the next 5 years. We'd like to do this as quickly as possible. In the second quarter of 2022, we are going to be working on a request for proposals to significantly ramp up this program. We hope to award the contract later this year and to start the work before the end of the year. For the lead service line replacement program, as I mentioned, funding is the biggest challenge here, especially on the private side, but we're working with our federal partners and our state partners. The work will be performed by a combination of in-house forces and external partners. We are working with other interested departments, the Department of Health, Mayor's Office, IEPA, CDPH. We are refining the program, the timeline, and the scope. The RFP that we will issue for the program is contingent on the funding determination, but we look forward to doing that sometime later this year. Next slide, please. Tips on which applicants or bidders the Department of Water Management looks to partner with. We're looking for nonprofits with prior grant administration and program management. We will need the trades involved significantly. So we're looking for vendors and companies with experience in construction management, professional services, engineering, and plumbing. And of course, We are looking to increase the number of diverse vendors. So we are strongly encouraging participation. And if you need more information on the Department of Water Management, a quick link is provided. And for additional information on lead service lines, there's also another link provided. And now I'd like to hand it over to our partners at the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And my name is John Yonan, and I'm the Bureau Chief here at Cook County's Bureau of Asset Management. Next slide, please. Under President Preckwinkle's leadership, the Bureau of Asset Management is divided up into these 3 departments that you see listed at the top there. In the real estate management side, you see that the county is responsible for 19 million square feet of real estate property, and in many instances, a lot of right-of-way and property that there may be in some of these municipalities, vacant land or along the expressways, ways that that land is not being utilized in ways that our Department of Real Estate continues to look at the best and highest use of that property. On the capital planning and policy side, obviously with that kind of footprint, the footprint including hospitals, court operations, the corporate campuses, there is a need to decide whether to, with the architects and engineers, keep the existing buildings, design, come up with opportunities to maybe make better, greater use of the property that we have. Many instances look at, environment sustainability opportunities to look at ways that some of that land could, take on things from either solar roofs or looking at ways that we can have some gardens on, again, not only just our campuses, but some of the property that the county is responsible for in these municipalities. And then lastly, of course, the facility management group, which we're going to go in a little bit of a deeper dive, maintaining these buildings, maintaining the properties, really has allowed this department, which is the largest department in the offices under the president, to be able to develop quite a bit of an institutional knowledge of the working trades. Again, it's the largest trades group within the county's offices under the president, and a lot of opportunity with some of their institutional knowledge of having this type of building footprint, knowing how to, again, look at ways to find energy efficiency in our buildings, that institutional knowledge is something that we wanted to pull together, along with the depth of our engineering and architecture, contracting expertise, and then knowing that, again, our real estate footprint touches all of the communities. And in the next slide, kind of having that institutional knowledge go to a program called the Infrastructure and External Projects Initiative, the IEP. And what this is going to allow us to do is be able to kind of look at ways that we can partner with some of these local communities and make transformative infrastructure investments. And we're going to get into a little bit about what that transformative is, but really the key here is that we know that there's been a number of kind of disinvestments in parts of the county where it was just perhaps dollars that may have been the need that they had to just bring in either contractors or, folks to go in and do the work. But once the work was done, maybe inadequate ways of preparing them how to maintain that infrastructure was something that we heard over and over again that gives us an opportunity to kind of step into that space. And so the key to this is this initiative is going to be successful if we know we're building that sustainable kind of opportunity to make infrastructure, whether it be human or the capital side, that's going to be sustainable with not only additional money, but about some learned skills. And I'm going to get into that in the next slide a little bit. So scale and expertise, as I mentioned, definitely with the county's ability to bring in the A&E communities to take on tens of millions of dollars of projects to even $100 million projects, but then something as simple as just discarding a piece of property through, contracting opportunities for our real estate side, and knowing that that little piece of property could go so far for our various communities to be able to decide what to bring, economic development to that possible community. So the scale and expertise of our team could be able to come alongside a number of these county or municipalities and give them that overarching opportunity You've seen over and over again the importance of being able to work with the municipalities, the state partners. The county really puts us in the position to be able to pivot to that municipal side, go and then pivot to the state and federal to be able to bring those resources. And so that scale and expertise is something where we know the value is added. On the equity side, something really important here that we really want to point out is that we know that a number of these communities obviously don't have the internal staff to be able to kind of take on some of this contract work. But what we found is that there is a lot of trade opportunities out there where we can bring in outsiders to come in and do some of the work, but we're missing the opportunity of going into some of these communities and bring our facilities management group to walk into these city halls, police and fire stations, bring the 1 or 2 people that work at the village to kind of learn the way some of our team is out there turning the wrenches, making decisions on some type of sustainable ways of maintaining the buildings, and be able to kind of teach them through, again, unionized workforce, ways that we can kind of grow their understanding. Opportunities that we have to be able to kind of fund some of the pre-apprentice programs is something that we want to partner with some of the outside agencies, but we want to do it with our team, with our folks wearing the tool belts into these communities to make sure they understand that this is something not only a government should be doing, but wants to leave behind to be able to kind of give them the growth potential, because we know more than ever that a job in the trades is a job for a lifetime. There's very few that are going to worry about unemployment if they can kind of move up that jobs ladder. And lastly, on the sustainable part, Liz is going to go into a little bit more of the details, but there's no question, as I said, that some of the opportunities that we have to partner some of our dollars in this area, some of those trades, again, going into some of these communities have already kind of looked at ways that we know with an automated building system or just even replacing some incandescent light bulbs, we have that expertise to be able to work with them. And so Liz is going to dive into a little bit of how we're going to be able to set metrics and measure that. And I will turn it over to Liz Granato, the Deputy Bureau Chief of Asset Management. Liz?
Thank you, John. Elizabeth Granato, Deputy Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Asset Management. So John spoke a little bit to what we would bring in terms of the added value in working with some of our municipalities and municipal partners. And certainly scale and expertise is one of the benefits that we can bring to this partnership. And, you know, just as we have done with managing our 19 million square feet of space in the county and the capital program that we have for the county's facilities, we've been able to really build a group of project managers, consultants, in-house union tradespeople who understand intricately the needs of maintaining, developing, and building new public facilities or existing public facilities. And some of that expertise, you know, can be anything from helping our local municipalities and working with them to write and review contracts, professional service agreements, solicitations that can be put out there, working with them to make sure that they've got building standards for their contractors, for their architect and engineering services that are going to meet the zoning laws, are going to meet the local regulations for their municipality. And beyond that, you know, we have the opportunity to facilitate that collaboration with other agencies and other governments to make sure that we are bringing best practices to our municipal partners, helping them with developing the intergovernmental agreements similar to what you might see in an Invest in Cook program, and working with the local elected officials and other agency partners who can work together to make the most of the funding that's available and get these projects off the ground and do so in a way that really enhances the region. And we know that there are going to be opportunities too, as we look at the vast amount of funding that's coming into our region, to really make investments into our public facilities that are going to reduce their operational costs, increase the efficiency of those facilities, potentially open up opportunities for real estate revenue for those municipalities. And those can become very sustainable investments that can have long-term impacts on the success of our local towns and municipalities. And then, one thing that we have always made important at the forefront of the work that we have done out of the Bureau of Asset Management is think about how we are using our dollars to increase the participation of MBE and WBE firms and be really equitable and mindful about how we are spending our capital dollars. So one thing that we think that we can really bring as an added value to our municipalities is connecting them with local M&W firms, working with them to create mentor protege programs to support their local M&W firms, making sure that we're doing capacity building of the local contractors and local firms in those areas, and really bringing that as a focus to how these dollars are spent regionally. Beyond that, too, with our experience in the trades and with us having the largest trade group under the offices and under the president, we have quite a bit of experience with apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs, both in the work that we do on our county facilities and also on other new capital programs that we've worked on. And the opportunity to bring that experience to the table and bring our experience in implementing those programs in the past can be a wonderful opportunity for collaboration with the municipalities, collaborations with our partners in labor, and really a great opportunity for local communities to see opportunities for jobs and see opportunities for jobs on work that is being done in their community and really have an investment in that kind of impact. Certainly, just like was discussed earlier in the session, having 19 million square feet of space means that we also have to think very consciously about how we are making that space compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act and how we're thinking about access for all members of the community in our public spaces. And as we look at the design standards that we bring to new facilities, how we retrofit facilities, we, have had quite a bit of experience, especially in our public safety spaces, and really putting accessibility first and foremost, and have found that we have brought a great expertise on that and look forward to partnering with our municipalities to make sure that this new round of investment makes sure that our local public facilities are accessible to all residents. The other thing that we've been able to do very well in the Bureau of Asset Management is invest in the efficiency of our facilities. So, one of the things that we have is called the Green Buildings Program, where we actually utilize the savings that we make from investing in making our buildings more efficient to fund future projects. So the money that we save by lowering our utility bills, lowering our expenses as a county, actually go to be invested into our buildings again to make them even more efficient. And a lot of those projects are kind of low-hanging fruit. It's just replacing, your incandescent bulbs with LED bulbs. It's looking at how you are managing your downstream waste, making sure that you have a robust recycling program and waste management program. And as we know, with some of the recent legislation passed out of the state of Illinois, there are going to be more opportunities with our utility partners to get energy rebates, to fund some of this work. And we want to make sure that we are working with our partners across all of our local governments so that they are aware of those opportunities. They're able to take advantage of those rebates. They're able to upgrade and make their building systems more efficient and see those dollars return to them, and ultimately find themselves making their county and making their public buildings more efficient overall. We do have a county-wide climate plan to make sure that our buildings are carbon neutral by 2050. It is a wonderful roadmap of how we can get our buildings to essentially be carbon zero by doing energy and doing improvements to our facilities, but also thinking about how we can get renewable sources of energy. And that's something that I think region-wide we can really assist our municipalities with, and assist them with looking at what are opportunities within the region for us to get more public agencies using renewable energy sources for their energy needs. Okay, next slide. So, kind of the next step is, how do we identify and engage the municipalities that we want to work with in this IEP initiative? We've, luckily CMAP, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, will be able to work with us to create really a landscape and a repository of what existing infrastructure projects are out there, and then help in developing a prioritization model that will put equity at the forefront, and also will give us the opportunity to gather some input from our selected municipalities to better understand what their needs are and what their priority projects are. So as we do that, we'll be able to draft an overall process for this IEP initiative, and be able to develop those partnerships and engagement with our local municipalities. So, as you'll read on this screen, it kind of starts with that project compilation for us. We need to know what projects are out there. What do our municipalities need? What's most important to them? We also need to think about what resources there are in terms of funding. We know that the state of Illinois' capital bill came out with just a really wonderful, rich amount of projects, and maybe there are going to be opportunities to leverage that funding along with some of the other funding that we'll see coming through ARPA and through the federal government's infrastructure legislation. And working with CMAP, we'll be able to really prioritize those projects and find opportunities for regional collaboration, and most importantly, opportunities to really leverage funding and find that we are getting a return on those dollars and seeing those projects get moving. We certainly want to look for projects that are quote unquote shovel ready, and understand, where can we get projects moving as quickly as possible to make the most amount of impact. But we want to be conscious about making sure that this has a regional lens and that we are looking at projects that benefit those communities who need them most. So we hope at the end of that process, we have a really rich project catalog that we can go to and say, hey, we have the dollars. Here's what we can do with those dollars. Here are things that are ready to go, and we can really make an impact on a community. So, we're going to have to assess those projects and really prioritize them. And working with CMAP, we can really develop a evaluation tool so that we are using metrics, we're using data to ensure that we are choosing these projects based on what is equitable funding, what is going to make these communities resilient, and of course, where can we deploy new funding or absorb other funding opportunities that are out there based on what is existing in terms of the state's funding opportunities, federal grants coming to the area. And there's a similar tool that CMAP has used in their transportation improvement program, which has shown a lot of success. And I do want to just say a caveat, while we want projects that are shovel ready and we want to make sure that we're making an impact in the region, sooner rather than later, we do know that there are going to be projects that have the opportunity to make a really deep impact on a community that may have been historically disinvested. And certainly we'll have to adjust the way we prioritize our projects to make sure that we are not leaving those projects on the table. And there's an opportunity for some equitable participation, no matter what stage of the process that project is at. So, we're going to have to go through a process evaluation. This is going to be a new process for the Bureau of Administration, but one that I think will yield a lot of fruitful partnerships. And one thing that we know in Cook County is that we are always kind of striving for continuous improvement. So as we develop this process, we're going to work with our municipal partners to understand what worked for them, what didn't work for them, how we can improve our project delivery, how we can improve our project selection, and how we can really work with our municipal partners to make sure that, we are getting those projects moving. We're helping them select projects that are eligible for funding and do make an impact on their communities. This will be kind of a long-term municipal engagement. This is a initiative that we hope will become a real core of the Bureau as we move forward, an opportunity for us to take the skills that we've developed in Cook County and really use it to support those working, and supporting public facilities region-wide. So there will be kind of strategic partnerships, and we hope to kind of develop some more comprehensive branding around this project so that people know what it is and they understand the potential impact that it can have on their community, and will also help us kind of build those strategic partnerships with others working in local government, those working for our local towns and municipalities. And as John mentioned before, hopefully we'll be able to have the opportunity for some capacity building, especially for our colleagues who work in those townships and in those municipalities who have maybe not had the opportunity to work on the scope and scale of projects that we have had. But hopefully we can work with them to get these projects moving and see some real capacity building and some real mentorship too for the professionals working regionally in Cook County. And as we do this, there will be a very large communications effort and engagement effort to make sure that our municipalities know that we're a partner and that we're here to help them. And we're here to help move big things in the region, but really looking to them to tell us, what does your community need? How can we help you? How can we get this moving forward? So we certainly have a lot of excitement about this initiative. On the next slide is the contact information for John Yonan. So you can contact John or myself. We're very excited about this. We hope to hear more from our partners throughout the Cook County region who are interested in working with us to really leverage this kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we have with ARPA and with the various opportunities for funding to make a significant impact on our communities. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Holly Bieneman with IDOT.
Thanks so much. I think we're going to go to the state, and I think instead of Holly, we have Matt. Is that correct?
That's right. Hi, I'm Matt Schmidt with the Illinois Office of Broadband. Pinch hitting today and happy to talk about broadband. So since I'm a late addition, I don't think I have slides to share, but I don't think that's going to hold me back. And so unless somebody knows better, I'll just launch into kind of an overview of what we're up to at the Office of Broadband. And we've had our Connect Illinois grant program working for 2 years now, 2 rounds of grant funding under our belts. All goes back to 2019 with Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly devoting over $400 million to broadband expansion in Illinois. And 2 years later, we have those 2 initial grant rounds under our belts. We just announced our round 3 notice of funding opportunity last week, and it's a $350 million funding opportunity that leverages state funding as well as capital projects fund dollars and other ARPA funding made available last spring. And so we are eager to hear from our providers, our local communities, our counties, our cities, and others around the state in how we might be able to partner in the pursuit of broadband expansion. And so our Connect Illinois website, I'll put that link in the chat, and that's kind of the one-stop shop for all things broadband when it comes to the State Office of Broadband here in Illinois. And so that's the big piece, that $350 million NOFO. We are accepting applications on a rolling basis. Grants in the amount of up to $10 million will be issued, and applicants can apply for more than one grant at a time. And so we look forward to continuing our engagement and our technical assistance for potential applicants. We'll have a kickoff webinar here in the coming week. And you can go to that website. There's a newsletter that folks can sign up to. I'll share that link as well. And you can simply stay in touch with our office through that newsletter, through that website, And the NOFO and all relating application materials are posted on that website. And so I just really encourage folks to lean into this broadband moment. A lot of times other elements of ARPA or the infrastructure bill have emphasis over broadband, but this is truly a historic moment for broadband investment at the federal and state levels. And we're hopeful that if we're able to deploy these resources in collaboration with local communities and our counties and our broadband providers around the state, that we're able to solve a problem once and for all and reach our goal of universal broadband connectivity around the state for all homes, businesses, community anchor institutions, anywhere that you want connectivity. We think that we'll have the resources to do that. And so in support of our communities, we've stood up an increasingly robust complement of digital equity and inclusion programming that's focused on community planning and digital navigation skills, and also regional engagement. And so all of that information is also available on our Connect Illinois website. A point that I just want to emphasize here is that that programming is designed in part to help local governments and communities think through funding decisions when it comes to use of ARPA dollars or infrastructure bill dollars. And so the idea here is we want to forge a collaboration with our local governments, with our communities. How do we partner with providers and others to put forward good projects that meet the needs of our communities, our local governments, and put the state in all corners of the state in a position to succeed in the years ahead. And so I'm really excited to talk about broadband in this moment. And I just really encourage engagement between folks on this call, those who are listening elsewhere, and our office, because we're here to help, and we're really committed to strengthening the hand of local communities and local governments as you consider the use of these dollars in meeting your respective broadband visions. For so long, the challenge has been finding funding to make equitable broadband expansion a reality. We believe that we have that now at our disposal. And so between that capital investment and the intentionality that goes behind partnering with our local communities and our local governments, we feel like we're going to have a great product for all corners of the state. And so I'll leave my comments there, because if you've heard me talk before on broadband, I can go on and on. But I just want to emphasize, we're here to collaborate, we're here to partner. And if anybody would like to reach out, I'll also put my email address in the chat box. Love to have some conversations stem from today's discussion. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you for all the other panelists talking about infrastructure, just vitally important, just like transportation and just like sustainability. I'm going to give folks a second to put some more questions in the chat. One of the questions that I did want to ask that was answered by Joel in the chat, but I do think it's important for others to hear. Joel, when you talked about lead pipe replacement, one of the questions was about requirements for immigration status. Could you clarify whether there's any restrictions here in the city about that?
For the program, there are no restrictions on immigration status. We want as many people to participate. We're going to run a very open program. There are no such restrictions. Everyone should feel welcome to partner with us without any fear or hesitation whatsoever.
I love hearing that. Thank you so much. And that's across the board for all of our programs here in the city. They're accessible to everyone regardless of immigration status. I just had to put in that plug. Let me check the other questions. One question is, what is the website for broadband? Matt, would you have the answer for that?
And the question is, what is it? What is the website?
What is the website for broadband that you were referencing?
Sure. So I dropped it in the chat box, and folks, I have to tell you, I think the easiest thing to do is to use your search engine of choice and just plug in Connect Illinois, and it will take you right there. Otherwise, it's a rather lengthy handle, but nonetheless, we really encourage folks to check that out. And again, I think all the information that you're looking for is right there. Connect Illinois.
Thank you so much. Yeah, one more question. I think this was more for the county. What are some examples of the kinds of infrastructure projects that are being considered within the municipalities? Maybe you have one or two examples, so then we move to the next session.
Sure. So no, it's real quick. So those would be, any kind of assets like we talked about, our asset management group, the government-owned assets, but also the utilities that in some cases might be, from the private providers. Those would be type of infrastructure projects. Obviously, again, things like what was mentioned from broadband to water mains, and everything, in between and above those that would be, needed to be able to bring those installations in. So all those types of things that, we can see that not only are ARPA eligible, but as Liz said, we've got House Bill 64 and other type of state grants. As long as government money can go for those items, those would be eligible for the program.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I thank you all again for this really great session. Again, I keep saying this is so important because it is. It's things that we use every day that we need. And again, we sometimes don't think about it, but it's just vitally important that we all understand these opportunities that are coming down the pike. So we are a little bit behind. So I want to move on to the next session, which is environment and sustainability. Talk about running out of time and climate change. So we're very excited to hear from our city point person, Angela Tovar, who's our Chief Sustainability Officer. From the county, Tanya Anthony, who is the Director of Budget. I hope I did not mess that up. And our state point person, again, not Holly, but a counterpart of Holly's, and we'll get to them soon. So let's get started. I'm going to kick this over to Angela, who's going to begin her presentation. And as always, there will be time for questions at the end. Keep putting your questions in the Q&A and we will get to them. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Nubia, and hi, everyone. As you already mentioned, I'm Angela Tovar. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Chicago, and I'm also a member of the Mayor's Office Sustainability Team. And I'm so thrilled to be here with Tanya. I'm a former employee of the Cook County Office of Environment and Sustainability, so it's good to be here with my former colleagues and also with our colleagues at the state. And just so grateful to be having this conversation. As we all know, climate change, really requires focus and investment from all levels of government. So it's just great that we are collaborating and having these conversations. If you can go to the next slide, I'll jump right in to talk about the Chicago Recovery Plan, or as we refer to it, a down payment on equitable climate resiliency, adaptation, and mitigation. This is an investment that builds off of the Mayor's Green Recovery Agenda, which was announced last year to describe our actions towards reducing the city's reliance on fossil fuels while also creating more equitable economic opportunities in the face of the ongoing pandemic. And so these are all neighborhood-specific climate interventions, and the intention here is that we are building safer, stronger, and a more just city for all, and that we cover a broad range of environmental issues. We want to address everything from land remediation and all the way to tree planting to green infrastructure. And it's important to mention that each of these initiatives was developed through the lens of racial equity and really centering our work on historically marginalized and underserved environmental justice communities. As you can see from the chart, our buckets, we have a couple of different buckets here. We are allocating $75 million to climate and environmental justice investments, another $46 million to equitably growing the city's tree canopy, $41 million to energy and equity investments, and then another $26 million in green infrastructure for a total of $188 million. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, for us, this is so critical to apply this equity lens as we evaluate what's being funded here and which projects and communities are being prioritized. And we know that many folks, particularly folks that are on the front lines of climate change, are still grappling with the pandemic, as we all are, and that climate change further compounds issues related to health, to our economy, to our quality of life more broadly. And through this recovery plan, we are very committed to delivering on equitable co-benefits, including climate and environmental justice, improved air quality, household savings, wealth generations, and green jobs, all things that we know that our communities need now more than ever. So I want to get into the details. If you can flip to the next slide, I'll begin by talking a little bit more about expanding our urban tree canopy. And we are proud to announce $46 million in equitable tree strategy. And this is really about both the reorientation of our operations and also identifying priority communities to ensure that we are planting trees the most. If you can go to the next slide. And so this is a little bit more detail. We are working with the Chicago Department of Public Health. We are working with a group of community tree stewards throughout the city of Chicago. We are working with the Department of Transportation and our Bureau of Forestry, which is under the Department of Streets and Sand. First, to identify priority communities. This is done by looking at a wide range of both socioeconomic data, it's looking at tree coverage, it's looking at health factors to determine which priority communities will be identified. From there, we'll be working in partnership with the Community Tree Stewardship Network that we have identified as partners, and we will be doing targeted outreach to increase the volume of folks that call 311 to get a tree to be planted in front of their house, and to also ensure that we are planting strategically along the parkway in communities that need trees the most. Next slide. And of course, as we all know, green infrastructure is so critical, particularly when we're talking about flood vulnerable communities. This is an opportunity for us to not only protect communities, but to also ensure that we are driving those equitable co-benefits that we know that interventions like green infrastructure bring to our communities. We know that green infrastructure can also provide cleaner air and water, as well as help restore ecosystems, help support a diverse habitat, and provide overall beauty to green spaces. And so this investment has been super critical to us as a city. If you go to the next slide, I can expand on a couple of projects that we have here. The first one is a $20 million allocation to the Space to Go project. That is a project that we do in coordination with Chicago Public Schools and MWRD, which transforms schoolyards into beautiful and functional spaces to learn, garden, and be outside. This investment, as well as a match from our agency partners, will allow Space to Grow to build 20 additional schoolyards in the city of Chicago. And they have a goal which we are very supportive of and are trying to help them reach, which is 100 projects by 2030. In addition to that, we will be providing money to our Department of Transportation, $5 million additional to expand on their very successful Green Alley program, which transforms alleys and in particular provides alleys with permeable surfaces to try to combat flooding and stormwater. And in particular, with this Green Alley program, we will be investing the money and prioritizing communities that are most vulnerable to flooding. So really targeted interventions in communities that are grappling with things like, overflows or with flooding basements, et cetera. And then finally, we are providing $750,000 to Rain Ready Chatham, which is a program located in the Chatham neighborhood. It is a result of some recommendations that were provided to the city, particularly for interventions in this community where they are grappling with a lot of flooding. And this is an opportunity for us to alleviate that burden for that community. So some of the interventions that we are exploring along with MWRD are looking at permeable parking, streetscape redesign, and potentially providing some resources directly to homeowners to combat basement flooding in particular. Next slide, please. The next bucket is our energy and equity investments, and this is targeted specifically at helping to foster the clean energy transition for small businesses, for our residents, and for homeowners and renters, and also our community anchor institutions. We know that reliance on reducing our reliance on fossil fuel is the best opportunity for us as a city to combat climate change. But we also know that that requires measures that are very costly, and that, you know, people, particularly low to moderate income homeowners, may not have the upfront capital to invest in electrification or in energy efficiency investments. And we know that in order to ensure that we can move quickly to decarbonize our built environment, that is going to require investment from government agencies as well, right? So we want to provide those incentives and those grant funds and the seed funding to enable that transition to take place. So if you go to the next slide, I can explain in more detail our suite of energy equity projects. We have two projects, one for 6 million and one for 15 million, that are aimed at retrofitting both multifamily housing as well as 1 to 2 family households. In both of these projects, the goal here is to reduce emissions and to improve affordability, and to also just sustain our valuable housing stock in the city of Chicago. The wide range of measures that could be eligible under these projects include electrification, weatherization, HVAC upgrades, as well as, where possible, rooftop solar installation. In addition to that, we have a project which we are calling the Neighborhood Power Project, which targets community anchor institutions. We all understand the value of community anchors, of our neighborhood institutions, the value that they bring to our communities. We want to make sure that we sustain them for the long term. And so this specifically targets communities that have been historically underserved, to ensure that we can sustain these institutions for many years to come. So the measures are very similar to what I've outlined in the housing program. We want to make sure that we're giving our anchor institutions the opportunity to get the upgrades that they need, so that they can lower their utility cost and save, and also just bring additional value to the surrounding communities. So everything from energy efficiency upgrades to HVAC upgrades, water conservation, solar installations, battery storage, weatherization, et cetera. And then in addition to that, you know, we want to demonstrate our commitment to combating climate change, and we'll be working on our own building stock as well as the city of Chicago. Our first plan is to install community solar on 5 neighborhood libraries in low to moderate income communities of color. We want to provide that as an opportunity to provide job training, and of course, to lower the cost of operations to the libraries as well. And then finally, we are going to be piloting a industrial community solar project. We will be identifying a building that would be an appropriate size for a community solar project, where we can work with local communities to provide subscriptions to a community solar project, which will then lower the utility costs. Next slide, please. And then this is our final bucket, but it is a very broad bucket. This is the climate and community resiliency investments. This is all aimed at deep community level interventions. And I can explain in more detail if you can go to the next slide. So again, this is a wide range of projects, all equally important for us to expand opportunities for the benefits that I've described, that we are looking to ensure that we are delivering on as a city, and to also just ensure that we are, you know, targeting emissions reductions at the same time. So we are providing $1.5 million to the African American Heritage Trail, which, if you are a New York Times reader, was just recently featured as one of the 52 most interesting locations to visit in the world. It is a historic trail that was a part of the Underground Railroad, and we are providing some additional funding to be able to expand riverfront and trail access, as well as to continue to build out the trail. In addition to that, we are providing $450 million to support a citywide compost drop-off network. these will be citywide locations, and we will continue to build off of that as well. And then an additional $6 million that will support a micro hauling project. So we want to begin organics collection in the city. We will be piloting that in a few target communities in the south and west sides. And then finally, $24 million to our health department, to CDPH, to build off of some work that is already underway by many agencies to remediate large brownfields in the city, contaminated land, and also to expand on the air quality network. We have an air quality network, a pretty robust network in the city that is managed by both Cook County and the state of Illinois. And we want to provide some supplemental air quality to support that existing network. And that would be for $24 million. Next slide. So a couple more things, and I know that I'm running out of time here, so I will try to move quickly. We will be providing $5 million to a community infrastructure fund that will be for competitive grants to provide capital resources to support community level climate adaptation and mitigation projects. We are giving $10 million to CDOT to support low carbon mobility. So transportation related projects that are aimed at reducing carbon in historically disinvested communities. This may look like purchasing bikes outright to residents, developing protected bike lanes, and then other pedestrian improvements. We have $5 million that we are dedicating to clean water restoration, and in particular to combating combined sewer flow outfalls. So when the stormwater and wastewater system, when the water collection is overwhelmed and all of that water comes back out to an outfall, there's a lot of contamination associated with that. And so this will provide money to the city to have the right tools to be able to clean that up. And then finally, $8.3 million to electrifying the city's own fleet. And that would be both for the purchasing of charging stations, as well as the transition of our fleet from gas to electric. And then next slide, please. And finally, you can go to the next slide. This is just a demonstration. I know that I've heard people in the last panel talk about this as well. This is just a sample of the opportunity that we have in front of us. I might be biased, but I think that the city and the county, especially just given our investments that we're making, are uniquely positioned, probably more so than any other region in the country, because we are making these commitments at a local level to make these climate investments. We know that there is additional funds because of the passage of CEJA and because of these other state grants that are being unveiled right now. And then in addition to that, we know that there are federal opportunities coming from the bipartisan infrastructure law. So right now we have all levels of government investing in climate change mitigation and adaptation and resiliency. And this is a unique moment for our region to ensure that we are maximizing funds. And so this is some of the funds that we are tracking that we hope to stack together to really maximize the benefits for our residents. And then finally, next slide, I will just end by sharing our contact information. All of our projects that I've described are in development right now. So we will continue to make updates and ensure that our bids are visible and that we're communicating outwardly on the status of our projects. So here is the Chicago Recovery Plan website, and then just some secondary sources of how to find us or more information about our projects. We do have a website link, which I also think my colleague Gavin will share in the chat. And then you can follow us on Twitter at Sustain Chicago. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tanya.
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Anthony. I am the Chief of the Bureau of Administration for Cook County. And today I am representing our Department of Environment and Sustainability. Next slide, please. So the Cook County Department of Environment and Sustainability's goal is basically to support healthy, resilient communities that thrive economically, socially, and environmentally. And we do this in 3 different areas. 1, we regulate businesses, solid waste facilities, asbestos removal, demolition, and more in our suburban communities of Cook County. And then next, we help communities by assessing, cleaning up contaminated sites to get them back on the tax rolls, helping homeowners afford renewable energy installations, providing access to affordable financing for businesses making energy, water, and resiliency investments, and educating the public about waste reduction, energy conservation, and other environmental issues. And then our goal is to reduce the county's environmental footprint by achieving the county's goals of 100% renewable electricity by 2030 and carbon neutral by or before 2050 for our own facilities and operations. Next slide, please. So the county has a goal, and one of our policy goals is basically to create sustainable communities. And some of the objectives to get us there are basically to ensure environmental justice and a healthy environment for everyone, promote livable, sustainable land use and development, reduce climate change and mitigate its effects, capture the job and economic growth potential of making Cook County more sustainable, and create enduring capacity in government and in communities by building a sustainable and resilient future. The projects that we are going to go over with you that are going to be funded by ARPA are going to help us to achieve these objectives. Next slide, please. So I'd like to take a moment to just talk about some of the high-level projects that we have planned to launch in 2022 using ARPA funds. The first one is healthy homes and deep energy retrofits. This will be addressing low-income families, particularly households with children with elevated blood lead levels. This will be focusing on projects that address lead remediation, air quality improvement, and energy efficiency to create healthy homes. Through a partnership with the Cook County Department of Public Health, we'll be expanding on their existing healthy home and lead remediation programs. Now, the contract opportunities that will be available for this particular project are we're looking for vendors who could manage intake, complete the assessments, and then manage the projects to completion. The next project is brownfields cleanup and redevelopment. Now, this is an expansion of a current program that we are currently working through. This will reduce contaminants that affect residents, especially those in minority and under-resourced communities, and then help create jobs where they are most needed. This project assesses suburban sites for contamination, then remediates those sites and return them to development for jobs, green space, and other purposes. For these projects, we'll be using environmental consultants to assist with assessment and remediation. The next project is our South Suburban Household Hazardous Waste Collection Center. Here, we're planning to build a county-owned and operated site for household hazardous waste drop-off, as well as satellite collection events around the region. Now, household hazardous waste is what some of the things you may or may not be thinking about. These are things that are living under your sink or in your basement or in your garage. And this will help us reduce health risk, harm to the environment, and reduce open dumping that contributes to blight in under-resourced communities. Now, today, existing facilities are on the north side of Chicago and in Naperville. So making this equity investment in the south suburbs closes the gap in this underserved community. The contract opportunities for this particular project are the construction for the facility. And we'll also be looking for consultants to assist with the environmental permitting and hazardous waste contractors to help with the management of the site. Next slide, please. The next project is our electric vehicle charging stations for suburban charging station deserts. So here we like to increase access to electric vehicle charging stations in the south and west suburbs. Here we'll be able to reduce barriers to owning electric vehicles and helping to eliminate pollution by adding charging stations in areas where they are not. Consultants here will be needed for community engagement. So the community engagement will be to determine locations that make sense for residents and business owners, as well as we'll be looking for contractors for installation of those of those charging stations once the sites have been selected. Next, we'll work on an urban farming gap analysis for suburban Cook County. Here we will be conducting a study of existing suburban urban agricultural businesses and support programs to map food deserts, identify gaps and opportunities. Then we'll make recommendations to improve access to fresh food and grow local jobs to improve public health. Contract opportunities for this particular project are, we're looking for someone to help us conduct the study, which will include quite a bit of public outreach as part of their scope. But these are American Rescue Plan projects that are, again, expected to launch by the end of the year. We also have future opportunities that are currently being explored, and I'll quickly go through those. First, we working on implementation of green infrastructure to help reduce flooding in South suburban communities where planning has already been done. We're also planning to provide technical assistance to help communities develop a comprehensive resiliency plan on how they can address the effects of climate change. Next, in collaboration with the Cook County Department of Emergency Management and Regional Security and Cook County Department of Public Health, we're going to work with communities to identify areas for community resiliency hubs, where in cases of disaster, residents can go for shelter and basic needs. The next proposed project is providing technical assistance to businesses to reduce pollution, energy, and water use, and assisting lower income homeowners to install renewable energy like solar panels. Next slide, please. So if you have any additional questions regarding these projects, please don't hesitate to email Cook County Department of Environment and Sustainability. I also encourage you to visit our website regularly for more information as it becomes available regarding these projects. Also, you can visit our procurement website for contracting opportunities, and please don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Next, I will turn the presentation over to one of the state representatives. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Christopher Schmidt. I work at the Illinois Department of Transportation under Holly Biedemann, and we will be talking today about a few of the exciting programs that are coming out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act coming to the state of Illinois, primarily through the Illinois Department of Transportation. Next slide, please. So these are environmental programs. They don't exclusively, they're projects that are basically reducing in a lot of ways the impacts of climate change, but also trying to reduce our carbon footprint through different transportation alternatives. I would like to say that it was great to hear Angela and Tanya's presentation. It's really fun to hear what is happening outside the transportation world. You know, for us transportation people, we typically sit in that world, but to hear what's going on throughout the city and the county is very important, and that work is very important, and very excited to hear about that. So the first program that I'd like to talk about is a new program under the Invest Act, and it's an acronym, of course, Promoting Resilience, Operations, and Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation Grant Program. So that's a mouthful. So they went with PROTECT for the acronym. Basically, the state will get some formula funding for this program, roughly about $48 million a year. What that looks like for you folks to understand is that it'll be projects that will help to build resiliency in our transportation network. So bridges at a higher level, roadways to protect them against flash flooding events, and culverts that are a little bit larger in order to help with larger stream flow in a flash flood situation. There's a lot of facets to this program. There's also a competitive program that's available. So City of Chicago, the county, any municipality is able to apply for some of those competitive bids, but the formula funding will be distributed evenly throughout the state of Illinois. Obviously, Chicago and the Chicagoland area having a very large population, there's a good chance that a lot of the programs, a lot of the projects will be placed in the Chicagoland area. So that's, I think, a great thing. Also, another portion of this type of funding, there's a 7% So the federal match typically is 80-20. So 80% of the federal funds, 20% from a local match. In this particular program, Protect, again, 7% is able to be taken away from what is contributed from the locals if you develop a resiliency improvement plan. And in IJA, as we call it for short, or IIJA, it outlines exactly what a resilience improvement plan looks like. Now that's both for the state and a local municipality who might be applying for the competitive program. So the state of Illinois will work to develop this resiliency plan with our great partners at CMAP and the city and the county. Also, there's a 3% reduction of the state match if you were to implement that in, or I guess I should say, if you were to roll that into your long-range transportation plan. So that's speak in transportation world for a forecast of future events and future projects. If you go to CMAP's website for the region, that's where that planning effort is housed. And most of the municipalities, if I'm not mistaken, have their own long-range plan for sort of those future events, future projects that will come into play. The next project type is carbon reduction. That's hopefully doing exactly what it sounds. We're trying to reduce carbon. I think it's something where in the neighborhood of 25% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector, depending on what year and who you talk to. State of Illinois will receive $42 million in formula funds. So the projects that are eligible for that are traffic monitoring, management, control facilities, public transportation projects, bike and pedestrian, advanced transportation congestion mitigation technology. Also available under this is alternative fueling types. So not only electric vehicles, but some of the other hydrogen would probably be a main focus moving forward, but propane, compressed natural gas, diesel retrofits for some of the locomotives. Obviously, the Chicagoland area houses 6 of the 7 Class 1 railroads. Within those yards, there's a lot of what are called switcher locomotives that move the different train pieces together to get a train ready to go from east to west. Those vehicle types typically are what's called a Tier 0. That is a very poor emissions standard. Typically, they're created or were manufactured pre-1973, 2001 to 73, but some actually go further back than that and are really poor standards. So the idea with the diesel retrofit is you would take a Tier 0 of a switcher locomotive and we would pay, or we would help fund for them to go to a Tier 2, Tier 3, and typically Tier 4 locomotive, which is much better air quality standards. So the hope here with this carbon reduction is projects like that would be funded. Similarly to the carbon reduction program is congestion mitigation air quality, or CMAQ for short. Most of the project types that I just spoke about are also eligible under CMAQ. CMAQ is starting to become sort of a legacy transportation program. You've probably heard of it in the past. For the Chicagoland area, the state's allocation is about $117 million now a year, and most of that does go to Chicagoland area because of its status of non-attainment. Our great partners at CMAP, which is the Chicago Metropolitan Area for Planning, Agency for Planning, excuse me, are the ones that help select those projects. They also help with administering and keeping track of them in what's called the TIP Transportation Improvement Program. So if you have any questions or you'd like to know more about how that program works in the Chicagoland area, you can just type in CMAP, so CMAP, and then CMAQ into your web browser, and you'll be flooded with information on how the CMAQ program works. There's a lot of great projects that have come out of that. The Divvy Bike Service would be one that I think most people would know about. We definitely gave some seed money for that, along with a lot of other great programs. The transit agencies have benefited greatly from this program because most of their projects do really help reduce the pollutants that are in the air. So next program that we see in IIJA is transportation alternative projects. I am going to put in the chat, I think it's to everybody, a project that was recently funded and is under construction in the Chicagoland area. Transportation alternative program more than likely is going to be a project that promotes pedestrian transportation or bicycle pedestrian, both maybe, or one of the two. Typically not a recreational trail. but some have been funded. But for the most part, it's a chance for folks to get out of their single occupancy vehicle and either ride a bike or walk. A lot of this is sort of flyovers that would be getting over train tracks, where would be a dangerous crossing typically for pedestrians, or over larger roadways. Let's say Lakeshore Drive is one that a lot of flyovers have happened. The Navy Pier flyover that you see was actually funded through congestion mitigation improvement, but also would have been eligible under what we call a TAP for short, the Transportation Alternative Program. So the final program that is in the IDGA bill that I'd like to talk about. So just to recap, I kind of went a little fast, but Protect and Carbon Reduction are brand new programs. The state is still trying to figure out, and so is the federal government, how that's going to work. But those two programs are brand new carve-outs, brand new money, going to a very, very important set of projects that I think the state is going to really take advantage of and will be beneficial not only to the city of Chicago, but the county and the surrounding areas for that climate mitigation piece, and then also trying to mitigate our carbon footprint. So electric vehicle charging infrastructure, sort of the big one. I'm very excited about this program. I think everybody should be. I see that as being the future, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call do. The state of Illinois will receive $148 million in what's called formula funds. So every year we will receive a portion of that $148 million that will go directly to electric vehicle infrastructure development in the state of Illinois. I will say that is the minimum. That's sort of the floor for the state of Illinois. There is a much larger maximum that we could reach for the city of Chicago, for the counties around, for the Cook County, for the rest of the state, really. There's about $2.5 billion that's going for sort of this discretionary or competitive program. It's my understanding from reading the bill that actually about 50% of that's going to go for infrastructure charging that's not only electric vehicle, but can be hydrogen, natural gas, propane, that are specifically to corridors related. So helping folks get from one side of the state to the other, and continuing with a national network, trying to build that out so that folks that have these types of vehicles can travel from one end of the nation to the other and not worry about range anxiety, which I'm sure you've heard of. But I think probably more importantly is 50% of the other one has to go to publicly accessible charging that is off the interstate. And the main focus there is for areas that are rural, low and moderate income, and communities that have been sort of disadvantaged historically. And I think that's a very important thing. And I'm really grateful that that was carved out and spelled out in this bill, and that there's that large of the pot of money, because naturally you would assume that some of this infrastructure money that we have from the formula is going to find itself in those communities. That makes sense. It's my job to help make sure that that happens. But the idea that there is 50% of these extra dollars, the money that is eligible for anybody to apply for, any municipality, being specifically carved out for that is really phenomenal. And I tip my hat to the federal government that they made that happen. So next slide, please. So there'll be a call for projects for all of these types: Protect, carbon reduction, congestion mitigation, air quality program, the TAP, again, transportation alternative program, and then electric vehicles. Now, I will say the first two and then the third one, the electric vehicle, will more than likely come from the state. We will be partnering with our local partners in the Chicagoland area, mostly with CMAP, which I'd mentioned previously. If you're looking at all for the two sort of middle there, the CMAC and transportation alternative programs, those have historically in your area been administered, or the call for projects have come out of CMAP. So if you just type in CMAP into your web browser, you will find both of those programs and a lot of information on how to apply, the different things that you can do to boost your potential application and things of that nature. The electric vehicle plan is something that we're working on here at the state of Illinois. There's been talk of electric vehicle plans and different infrastructure projects throughout the session today, but state of Illinois is attempting to try and identify locations throughout the entire state. And the reason we are doing that is the formula funding that was outlined that I spoke just recently about is tied to a plan that the state has to have approved through the Federal Highway Administration. The state of Illinois is actually very fortunate. We'd started this project long before IIJA came into existence. And because we're already underway with this, there's a very good chance we could be one of the first states to have this plan approved, and we'd be one of the first states to be able to spend that money. Another great resource for electric vehicles is the Clean City Coalition. Samantha Bingham is the director of that and works for the city of Chicago. She is an unbelievable advocate for electric vehicles and getting single occupancy, combustion engine vehicles off the road. Definitely check out her website. But we're working to bring a coalition together to come up with a plan, cite some of these locations so we can invest that money as quickly as possible. The resiliency plan, again, I spoke in the protect portion, is basically a requirement to get a larger sum of the federal funds, and also is just a really good idea. Understanding where we can be more resilient and where there's been, we just saw this bridge that collapsed in Pennsylvania, and things like that we want to avoid. And this more extreme weather that we're seeing is making that more and more likely, with our bridges and streets being much older. So this investment is very timely. So next slide, please. Next slide, sorry. All right, just a few things. We've heard about GATA, trying to wrap this up. If you haven't and you're planning on applying for these funds, you're going to need to be pre-registered in the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act portal. You can type GATA portal into your web browser. It'll get you in, and they'll be able to provide resources where possible. For most of these construction projects, whether that be under Protect, the carbon reduction program, CMAQ TAP, having the pre-engineering phases done is always a positive. I will admit that Protect does outline where some of that funding is available for these initial phases in a construction project. And also in the Chicagoland area, CMAP has been generous enough that if you're a community that has hardship, or we're able to provide information on, that you would not be able to fund these phases, there is a section of the CMAQ program in the Chicagoland area that will help you with financial assistance on those phases. But it's always a good idea to get your planning, your feasibility, environmental analysis, design, and land acquisition completed prior to applying for federal funds. So that would be, I think that would be the end. Next slide, maybe. I think that's the end. Sorry, I went really fast, but if you have any questions, I will put my email address in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to connect with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was very informative, as were all the other presentations, just very exciting. And I think to your point about the bridge that we saw that recently collapsed, it's so important that we are intersectional in our work, and not just supporting important infrastructure projects, but taking into account how the climate is affecting that. So thank you so much. You also all brought a really great crew who was answering all the questions in the Q&A as you were presenting. So we do not have any open questions at the moment. I'm going to wait 1 minute-ish so that if someone has an outstanding question they'd like to put in the Q&A, you can go ahead and do that. We are basically right at time, though we started a little late, so I also don't want to belabor and leave folks over. So I'm going to just kind of wrap it up, and if there's one question, we'll take it. Otherwise, we'll be good to go. There is no other plenary session after this, so this is the conclusion of our Readiness Summit with the City, County, State. I want to thank everyone for their time, both this morning and today. I want to thank all of our panelists. We recorded this session. It was also streamed on Facebook. It's accessible right now on Facebook if you want to go watch it all over again, or if you want to go back tomorrow, no problem. We will also be sharing the recording on all of our recovery websites. So as information unfolds, as timelines, as RFPs are developed, you will be able to go back and watch this. If you want to say, like, what did they say about that? You can go through the recording and take notes as to what you're interested in. We will also be sharing the slides on both the website. We'll be sending a link to that. The slides, it's just too big of a deck to email to folks, but we will make those accessible so folks can look at those as well. And then, of course, if you have any outstanding questions or concerns from the city side, please feel free to contact us at communityengagement@cityofchicago.org. Put that in the chat. So that I think is in all the links and information you've received. I see some, yes, slides. What is the last email address for the state rep? I think, yes, Matt, you were gonna maybe put your email, your contact information. If folks, whoever's comfortable putting their contact information or a general one for their office, please feel free to do that in the chat. And one of the questions was, how can a private provider bring solutions to public sector for consideration? And I do see that IDOT is answering that, but if there's anyone from the state that wants to answer that quickly, that's fine as well. the question again is, how can a private provider bring solutions to a public sector for consideration?
Well, yeah, this is Chris Schmidt with the Illinois Department of Transportation. I mean, I guess that's a little bit broad. It would depend on what your solution is. You know, we're always open to listening to folks that have ideas about solutions. I will say that Illinois has a very robust procurement law, so some of those conversations need to be very, very careful in the way they have them. But ideas and you know, innovation is something we always welcome at the department. It's just as long as we follow those guidelines and make sure that we're doing the best justice for the taxpayers. But yeah, just reach out to the Illinois Department of Transportation, and we'd be happy to connect.
Thank you so much. All right, well, I believe, Tanya, you came on the screen. I don't know if you had anything to say.
Real quick, I was just going to say, to answer that question, feel free to email, and I just put it in the chat, environment@cookcountyil.gov. Feel free to email and give us your ideas.
So thank you. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for everyone's attention and time today. This was just so informative. Thank you to the speakers for the presentation. I know I'm really excited to see what we're going to see as we collaborate together, both with our community partners and the city, county, state.